Mr. Bosun Tijani, joining me live from our Abuja studios. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. It's good to have you on the program, and thank you for your time. Honorable Minister, if you can hear me, let's start the conversation around the sustainability of Nigeria's telecommunication industry. There's been a lot of issues around tariff and all of that in recent times. But first, give us an overview of the issues and how this comes to you, that report from KPMG.
Thank you so much, Tolilope. I think talking sustainability, perhaps we have to start from thoroughly describing the significant role of this sector in our economy. I think fortunately as a nation, we took the decision to do full liberalization of the telecommunication sectors in 1999. And if you follow the growth in our GDP since then, it's been extremely exciting. I think the years following 1999, we probably saw about year-on-year 30% growth in our GDP. And if you look at all the decisions that were taken as at this time, you realize that it was truly that full liberalization of the sector that led to the increase or improvement in productivity across key sectors in our country. Over the years, of course, we all know that the telecommunication sector is now developed to becoming the backbone of any modern progressive economy. Just imagine today what life would be like without your phone or without access to the internet. How many businesses will be grounded if they are not connected? Even the ability to consume government services, or in some cases, the ability to access quality healthcare. You know, all these the outcomes of a very vibrant telecommunication sector. Nigeria is probably the second largest telecom sector on the African continent, if not first in some cases. We've seen a lot of investment because of government effort from the private sector over the years. In this sector, we've seen significant investment in the sector. But what we're still faced with, because of the size of our country and our population that is constantly growing, of course, is that the investment that is required to truly offer service meaningful connectivity, which means that in urban area you have somewhere up to 25 Mbps of download, and in the rural area you can at least achieve 10 Mbps, which is not the case at the minute. There's still a significant investment that needs to be done. So when we came in, following the ethos but also the mandate of Mr. President, we looked at what we needed to do as a nation, as a government, as regulator, to empower the businesses operating in this sector, but also ensure that that sector continues to grow. For those who are following, this sector employed directly about 15,000 people directly, but indirectly, when you talk about all the people servicing the sector, including those that are selling the Richard card and so many other services, this sector employs about 500,000 people. So it's extremely important that on one hand, we have to ensure that the sector continues to contribute to our growth and development as a nation. But on the other hand, we need to bear in mind that telecommunication services is now literally close to human rights, that people must have access to meaningful connectivity, and this is the only way we can grow. So as a government, we looked at what we needed to do. We realized that we can't wait for the private sector to do all the investment that is needed to truly make telecommunications to be where we want it in the country, because private sector will always only invest in locations where they can see short to medium term returns on investment. This is how private capital works, and that's not going to be sufficient for us because we can't restrict only our people to urban area. So on the other hand, government must step up and invest in infrastructure in part of the country that the private sector will not go, which is why our President Tinubu and the Executive Council approved that we should invest $2 billion into building the backbone for the country to ensure that the quality of connectivity in Nigeria, regardless of where you find yourself, can be amongst the best in the world. But at the same time, we still need the private companies to continue to invest. And we know, if you look at the global inflation over the years, there's never been an increase in this sector in terms of tariff for many, many years. But if you look at inflation, cost of doing business, which is not unique to Nigeria, is something that is common. It's becoming, as we know, a bit difficult for these companies to truly continue to operate sustainably, but also in a manner that continue to invest. And we have to bear in mind, telecommunication is not one of those areas where once you've invested, you can leave the equipment and they will continue to work. You have to constantly be maintaining them, bringing in new equipment. So we understand why these companies are agitating for increase in tariff, but because we also understand that our people must be catered for, we have to look for a scientific way of determining what sort of increase we should be talking about. But also when we're talking sustainability, that sustainability is not just only about increase in tariff, but every other thing that government can do to, for instance, help reduce the cost of doing business for a lot of these companies, which you can also see that President Tinubu also declared all telecommunications infrastructure as critical national infrastructure, implying that those who vandalize this equipment, they will be met with the strictest form of response from the law, thereby protecting this equipment, ensuring that we can have access to it. But at the same time, they are agitating for 100% increase in tariff. We don't think the government of today will allow for 100% increase in tariff. That's not what we're going to do. But we understand the need to increase the tariff so that the sector can continue to be sustainable. And over the next couple of weeks, we will hear from National Communications Commission that will issue a directive on what we consider as government to be permissible.
Interesting stuff, because I was going to ask you, considering inflation figures that we have, foreign exchange challenges, and the tariffs has been just the way it's been for some time. I was opportune to speak to one of the MDs yesterday, particularly Nine Mobile, and he was harping on that fact that the impact on the industry. But now let's look at what this also even means for customers and users of this service. What sort of services should they be expecting, even if at the end of the day there's this nod from the NCC? What should they expect positively?
No, absolutely. And I think if you follow the work of the NCC over the years, the directive from the government, which NCC has been implementing effectively, is that we must improve on the quality of experience, right? We used to call it quality of service, but this thing is much more than just the service that people consume. What are the opportunities that are there for you to be able to lodge complaints? How do we ensure that consumers can actually have a better understanding of the services that they pay for? Because we've seen the somewhat ambiguous and complicated description of the packages that people buy sometimes. And because of this, people are actually confused as to what are we paying, what am I paying for, and what should I be expecting to get. So NCC has now developed a more transparent pattern and approach for measuring the quality of experience that people get. But also many people don't understand that for telecommunications companies, whilst you may know the big MNOs who are the front facing, which is MTN, Airtel, Glo, Nine Mobile and the likes, a lot of people don't understand that there are so many other companies that are involved in the process of providing these services for you. Whether they're the companies that are running the towers that are responsible for the transmission of the services, or those who just are responsible for maintaining so many infrastructure along the line. NCC is also now ensuring that all those companies are able and they follow set procedures for providing the right services to our people. The mandate of this government is very clear, that for us, telecommunications is no longer just a random service that people consume. It is an essential service. It can be something that denies you access to financial services because you want to access your bank account on your phone. You want to be able to do transaction. It has a lot to say there. It's the backbone for providing healthcare for so many people. It's the backbone for communications for businesses. So for us, the quality of that service is extremely important. And that's why I mentioned earlier, we are a very responsible government. We're not just leaving this to private companies because the private sector's investment is not going to accelerate us fast enough to where we want to be to ensure that we have the best quality across the entire country, regardless of where you find yourself.
Now, this again, you talked about the percentage that government would not be looking at 100%, and some will say it's about 40–50%. But in your thoughts, what do you think would be appropriate for sustainability of that industry? Because the effect on the economy, like you've identified, it's enormous.
I can say on one hand I have a technology background, but also an economics background as well.
Okay.
But at the same time, I think I'll be deceiving you if I say as an individual I can sit here and give you the percentage. This is why, and if you speak to a lot of people in this industry, the study that we've commissioned is one of the first of its kind on the African continent. People talk about these studies a lot. For us, we think this is an important issue. I think for many people, the second most important thing that they spend money on is buying airtime and credit and data, right? So it's not something that we can just haphazardly pluck a percentage and say, go ahead. So the study that has been led by KPMG and Simon Cooper is actually taking into consideration data sets from MBS, from a lot of these companies in terms of how they do business. There's a particular data set that they've used which include things like average revenue per user, which we're saying this is not just about revenue for the companies, but this is also how you determine whether these companies are profitable or not. They've taken that into consideration. They've taken into consideration the cost of doing business. They've taken into consideration the inflation. They've actually done the model of what would be the implication of an increase in tariff to the different category of people within our country. That's what they've done. And this is what's going to inform the percentage that we will choose. I don't want to jump ahead of the interpretation of this report. I received the interim report yesterday. I met with KPMG and Simon Cooper. And this morning, we've had a breakfast meeting with the CEOs of all the mobile network operators in Nigeria. NCC has now been given the mandate based on the interim report to come up with a proposition on what percentage we believe is acceptable that will not inflict unbearable pain on Nigerians.
I like that fact. You talked about the federal government supporting, to avoid vandalism and all of that, which is very